7.2, presentation, discussion, possible action on the Wolf Pen Creek Master Plan. Ms. Kelsey Hayden, this is a topic that's been discussed a number of times and the council is very much interested in, and we're appreciative of the fact that you have some ideas to bring forward.
Good evening. Hear me? The item for you tonight is some potential improvements for Wolf Pen, and as you mentioned, Wolf Pen Creek has a long history, and so before we get started, we'll go over the background. I couldn't fit all of it on one slide, so I'm going to hit the high points. But the original Wolf Pen Creek Corridor Master Plan was approved in 1988, along with the tax increment finance district that was created at the time for investment in the Wolf Pen Creek Corridor. The amphitheater was completed in 1993 along with some drainage improvements, and the master plan was revised in 1998, so 10 years after the original. The lower and upper trails were completed in the early 2000s, and it's important to note that the Wolf Pen Creek, that TERS expired in 2009. After that, in 2013, there were some site improvements to the festival site, and in 2019, the city took over and opened the Meyer Center on the site there that used to be the Arts Council building. And then in 2025, the Parks and Rec Department put in a service level adjustment for a master plan. We did do the work internally, so we did not hire a consultant. So the work that we're providing tonight is work that we have done internally. And in 2025, we started working on this proposed master plan. As a reminder, Wolf Pen Creek is the entire corridor. This is the revised master plan that was approved in 1998. So again, it runs from George Bush all the way down to Highway 6. For tonight's conversation, we will focus on the park proper, so the amphitheater and the festival site, which you see here. But we also don't want to forget the trails. So this is the upper trails portion, which runs from George Bush down to the site. And again, this is all those restaurants, so it's the back of Sonic and all the different restaurants that have connections into that trail system there. And then these are the lower trails, which run from the park site all the way up to the feeder road on Highway 6 by Cavender's. So over the last 2 years, we've really focused on activation of the space with the resources that we already have within the Parks Department. And so a few of those to point out. This first picture that you see here with the large crowd is a Starlight Music Series. It was the first concert of this season in April. We had almost 3,000 people on site, where we had Stoney LaRue and Jason Boland. Overall, we set records with attendance this last year at the 3 concerts that we hosted. We focused on bringing in well-known bands and names that people knew, and we drew out larger crowds. I also wanted to point out the picture below that of the 2 young girls in their costumes. This last October, we partnered with the Texas A&M Forest Service to host a Trunk or Treat. So it was a trick-or-treat inspired event, but we also handed out tree saplings. We had almost 1,000 people attend that event. We've also activated the space with the yoga in the park. So we do that on Saturday mornings. You can see some people there enjoying yoga. That's been really popular. And then we also have been doing the Food Truck Wednesdays on Wednesday nights at the festival site. It was slow to start, but this last year we've seen 200 people out every Wednesday at those food truck events. And then you can see the annual attendance there. We had about a 12% increase from 2023, where we had 97,000 people come out to Wolf Pen. And then this last year in 2024, 109,000. In addition to some of those wins, we also have constraints with the site. I do want to remind you all that it is in the floodway and floodplain. It's intended to flood. So this, while it might look alarming, it does recede, but we're seeing it happen more and more often. And so since I've been here, which has been 18 months, we've seen the water this high 6 different times. And so these are recent pictures. You can see the amphitheater there. The one on the right shows the bridge. So the water usually goes up and over the bridge. And the biggest thing to point out with this is the cleanup, because it's not just water that recedes, it's silt. So usually about 6 inches of silt stays that our team has to go in and clean up. It's usually about a good day's work, but we get it done. This is a picture of the flood area there. The blue is the floodway, and the black hatching is the floodplain. The peach color is the 500-year floodplain.
500-year.
Yes, sir. And so it's important to point out, although it was intended to be built here, any improvements that we are proposing in the blue or the hatched area could potentially require permitting from the Army Corps of Engineers, potentially. Something that we're already working on is a grant. We are working with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension and the Texas Water Resource Institute. Texas A&M AgriLife is the grant holder. We are partnering with them, and so this is an erosion control grant. It's over a 4-year period. We started it in 2024, and really it's a focus on natural vegetation being planted, invasive species being removed, and the creation of riparian buffers to help with the erosion. So if you go out there today, you will see it. We've started no-mow zones, and it's really started to help in those segments that you see there highlighted in green. In addition to the proposed master plan that we'll get to in the next few slides, we also wanted to point out the importance of the overall aesthetic. And so the existing aesthetic that you see there in the bottom left, that is the pedestrian entrance on Holloman. We believe that it would be really good, in whatever improvements that we move forward with, that we carry that overall aesthetic throughout the park to create a sense of space. This is iconic. It lets you know where you're at, and we think it'd be really nice to carry that throughout. The other two pictures are the Pearl District in San Antonio, and then the bottom right picture, of course, is Aggie Park. This is the proposed improvements that we have for your consideration tonight and feedback. I'll go through them in numerical order, and then in the next few slides we have some conceptual pictures to kind of show you an idea of what those improvements might be. So the first one is the installation of amphitheater style seating. So right now it's just a grassy hill, so installing some amphitheater seating from the front of house down. Item number 2 is the addition of shade. We, in our plan, are not proposing to shade the entire area, although it could be done. We are proposing to flank the sides so that you could create some shady spaces.
Would the amphitheater area be shaded, and the seats?
They would not in this plan, but
Okay.
it could be looked at.
But the shading is, as you propose, is back further above those seats.
Yes. Number 3, you can see it in the amphitheater site as well as the festival site, would be food truck areas, so dedicated pedestals for food trucks to come in, pads and pedestals. Right now, we require self-contained food trucks. It usually requires a generator. They're really loud, and so these sites would have the plugs for food trucks to not have to be self-contained. Number 4 calls out the existing restroom, doing some upgrades there. They're definitely needed. Number 5 is up at the festival site. That's the potential water feature or splash pad. Number 6 would be a gathering space, the addition of a pavilion. And then number 7, you see kind of throughout the amphitheater site. The entire amphitheater is currently fenced, and we do have gates, but they are not aesthetic, and they don't create kind of a sense of entry. And so we're proposing some improvements there to kind of let you know you're entering into a space. Or if we had ticketed events, you could have that as your ticket entry point. So the next few slides will be some conceptual photos. I also wanted to mention the city was recently, we received a third party who's interested in partnering both on programming and improvements to Wolf Pen, and a lot of the improvements that you'll see tonight align with improvements that they recommended. And then potentially as an opportunity, they might bring funding to the table to help with some of those improvements. So the first one, number 1 on the map, was that amphitheater style seating. So here you can see some conceptual pictures of what that might look like. There's 3 different options there: fully concrete, some grass, and then that top right picture is, of course, again, of Aggie Park on a much smaller scale. Number 2 calls out the shade. So again, a few different options. The bottom right picture is the Mitchell Pavilion in the Woodlands. Very popular site, very close to us. And then the top picture is just an option that would be maybe less shade, but still kind of cover some of the areas to create some shady spaces. Number 3 is those food truck pads that I mentioned. So again, creating designated spaces for those food trucks to go. We have them at all of our events, and again, they're self-contained, so they've got a generator, they're usually really loud. Number 4, this also calls out the restroom, but overall signage and branding improvements throughout. But that's a picture of the current restroom. Just need some updates in that. And then this is some pictures of the water feature and splash pad. And so it's not your traditional splash pad that we're thinking there. Again, going with the overall aesthetic and the big boulders, creating something that everybody can go to, and it's also aesthetically pleasing when it's not in operation. Number 6 is the gathering space or the pavilion that would be up at the festival site. And then number 7 shows you what those entry points might look like. Again, something telling you you've arrived or you're coming into a space. And with that, those are all the slides that I have to share. We're certainly looking for feedback and direction on the things that you've seen tonight. And I'll answer any questions you might have.
Okay, very interesting presentation. I'm sure some comments. Mr. Smith has already got his finger raised, so we're going to start from that end and work this way.
Thank you, Mayor. This looks great, and I also saw the proposal that the private entities submitted, and there is a lot of consistency among that. One of the questions that I have, though, is filling in the moat in front of the stage. Now, I know that flooding is still going to happen, but at least when it dried out, we wouldn't have the moat. Is that something that would require Corps of Engineers permit, or all of it,
We're not sure if it would require the permitting, but we would have to do coordination with them to make sure that it doesn't require a permit.
Okay, but that's something that I think would make the attendance at one of those events much more pleasant.
We've heard that from quite a few people.
Okay.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I was following up on a question I had. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you. I am super excited. I've been waiting diligently for this for a long time, and so I really appreciate it. I kind of want to start off by saying I overwhelmingly appreciate everything from the time that we've kind of started talking about this a few years ago at strategic planning to now. You can really see the shift that the city has taken, especially the Parks Department, to reprogram the area. So I want to preface by saying I really appreciate that, because not only does that reintroduce folks to Wolf Pen Creek or introduce it to them if they're new here, but it also gives us opportunity to learn what works, what doesn't, and what the area really needs. And so I think that with that, this is, I think, pretty similar to something Brian showed me that they had mocked up when he got here. And so it's like, I think that these ideas have been gestating for a while, and it's nice to see them presented right now with some data to back it up. Hey, better or quality over quantity for Starlight seems to really work. Really engaging folks where they are. And so I'm really pleased with everything. I think it's fascinating that this is right around the time we got that private offer, which I thought was really interesting as well. I guess the one thing, I don't have anything, there's nothing I can detract from this. I think it's fantastic. I love the idea that we're going to keep, I really push with a theme to have a distinct personality and look for the area. I think that's spot on, especially the splash pad area. The one question that I have is for the seating at 1. Is there a rhyme or reason to have it more of that style and not stadium seating with actual seats?
The thought from staff's perspective is the operations that go behind cleaning up after the floodwaters come in, because the floodwaters do cover that entire area there. You can go back to that picture. You can see, most of that seating would be covered.
Right.
It's not impossible,
Right.
but that is why we recommended without the chairs, the fixed chairs.
Sure, and that makes a lot of sense. I could go either way. I just feel like the fixed chairs just offer something more, but I also understand sort of what we're working with. I think that if outside of any of this, I'm sure we're going to have hopefully positive things to tell you going forward. I think the number one thing to do immediately is those entrances, the number 7. I think really giving, really signifying, hey, you're entering into that space. Like if that could get pushed to the top of the list as we work everything else out, I think that's super important to really start to designate you are entering into our arts district, our amphitheater. This is, and really giving it that personality that it needs. But otherwise, I think y'all have done a wonderful job. Thanks for keeping this in house. I know that was difficult and taxing, but y'all are the experts on it, so it's nice to see.
Mr. White?
Well, let me just echo what Councilman Wright's comments were, because I'm in love with it too. I think it's outstanding. I love the way you've kind of focally put music. I mean, this is a great music venue. You've already had experience with music venues, so I think it's wonderful. I love how you're keeping the green space. I love if you could go back to the water feature slide. That would really be eye-catching if we could do something like that. I love the Lakewood Park picture right there. I think it's great. I love how you're kind of keeping the trail. So I love it. I can't wait to see it in action.
Ms. McElhaney, any comments?
Can you start at that end? Can you start at that end?
I can keep on going. Mr. Yancey, I'm just going that way. Mr. Schaefer, I'll get to you because I know this is a parks professional's dream right here. Go ahead, Mr. Yancey.
Thank you, Mayor. Kelsey to the rescue. Thank you very much for this presentation and getting this off high center. We've been talking about it for the better part of 3 years. It's time. It is time for Wolf Pen Creek to reach its full potential. And I believe if we're going to do it, that we need to do it right. I agree with everything that my colleagues said here. I would just like to see us go a little bit more. I'd like to see the actual seats, at least a significant bank of them. With backs and armrests and all of it.
A cup holder?
A cup holder would be great. The parking, I do worry about parking because I have a feeling we're going to succeed, that this council will be the one and this staff will be the one to succeed, and we will significantly enhance attendance and quality of the shows and the quality of the facility, and that's going to mean more humans. So can you answer me the question, do we have some sort of reciprocal parking agreement with Post Oak Mall?
We currently do, yes, sir. So that's used for all of our events. We use Post Oak Mall for the parking. So it's an annual agreement that we do with them. I don't know the fee off the top of my head, but it's a nominal fee to use that space.
Is in your time here at some of the larger events, you said at one of them we had how many people, the max number of people since you've been here?
Well, that was the I Heart America event, and I didn't talk about that on the slide, but the I Heart America event we had 3,000 people at, and we had parking at Post Oak Mall, and it was not an issue both on ingress and egress. Getting people in and out was not an issue at all.
And that was my question. So Post Oak Mall's parking facilities handled that level. And I presume if we got events up to 6,000 people, we would just have to do some sort of shuttle bus arrangement?
Possibly, or a lot of times when these events are happening, the mall's already closed, and so it hasn't really been an issue.
Okay.
But potentially you could do shuttle as well.
If you could go back to your picture relative to the gathering space or the mini pavilion, I'd like to see one of these really large, or 2 or 3 of these in a semicircle along the top there, where those gathering spaces have a view. Because I think if I looked at the map right, where you have the gathering space now, people could not actually see down into the amphitheater. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so it'd be great if, people could see it from those for the shade that they offered. A part of me loves the idea about the splash pad, or the non-traditional natural-looking splash pad. It's a really cool idea. I just wonder about wet kids, running around playing in that, and then they go down, and the parents, split attentions between watching their kids. And this would just be this is just a splash pad, right? It wouldn't
Correct.
be deep.
No, it would not have any standing water. It would just
I'd
be
give
like
some
a spring.
thoughts to the logistics of that. I don't necessarily have anything against it. It's just the divided attentions and the divided attractions. And, what are you there for your kids? For the splash pad, or are you there for a concert? Are you there for both? And if you are, as a young family, what does that look like? That's about it. I think it's time, and I think we need to do it right if we're going to do it. I agree with everything my colleagues said. Covering up the moat, even if it allows the water to pass, beneath it, some sort of suspended platform, elevated platform over to bring the level up. And that's all I had. Great job. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Nichols.
Mr. Schaefer?
Thanks, Kelsey. I don't have that much new to add. I agree with my fellow council members. There are some ways to get into a lot of details here that probably we shouldn't do at this point, but I would like to go back to that overall kind of plan view you had, maybe for the feedback piece right there. So on the seating, I think you pointed out, it would just, the tiered seating, let's call it, that you showed, which is still kind of has this natural feel to it, would just be toward the front there where you have number one.
That's correct.
And that would be the area that floods.
Yes.
So I actually like it that way. I know a couple of my fellow council members would like to have seating with, chair backs and et cetera. But I think people having the choice of where to sit is still offered by what you're showing. And I think that creates a nice feel. I've always liked the open grass slope there for that reason, that it's, blankets, chairs, whatever. And this provides a little more structure to that, but it doesn't tell people you sit here and you sit there, which sometimes I think causes problems, particularly if it's going to flood. It's going to be a lot harder to get in there and clean things out if you've got a bunch of fixed seating. So I would differ from a couple of my colleagues on that one, but I could go either way. The shade, I don't really, the shade, the same reason as the shade being pulled back, because it would be in the floodway, or it would be in the floodway, I think. Is that right?
For our thought in doing the shade flanking the stage, it was to eliminate blocking any viewpoints. But when you look closer at Mitchell, the entire shade, you can still see under it.
Right.
And then, of course, another consideration for us was we just now started hosting our fireworks there, and so if it's covered, you wouldn't be able to see the fireworks. But certainly wouldn't want to make a decision for one event a year.
Yeah, good point. That would be something to consider. That it would seem a little odd to me that what might become the premium seating at the front wouldn't have shade, and the shade would be at the back. And at the same time, I've always thought it would be interesting for us to evaluate what we might do with trees related to shade. Now, that's not an instant solution here, because these structures are instant solutions, but in a lot of parks, mature trees provide really nice shade. And the orientation of this particular feature, and this is kind of theoretical, because it would take 30 or 40 years to get to the trees you want. But if they were across the back, I think where Bob was talking about, you would have a nice area at the back that was shaded by trees, a tree canopy. And the way the sun angles are there, it may or may not provide shade when you need it in terms of heat. But that's probably a moot point. I like the idea of some sort of shade structure to help more immediately. You had one thing in here related to some of the details, like the signage, I think. Mm-hmm. Can you show that signage? So, yeah, there you go. So this is probably more than we need to get into, but the Welcome to the Creek sign that you have in this in this picture, are there thoughts about how that would be updated?
We haven't really done the work on that, but these signs are throughout the entire upper, lower trails and the entire park system. So,
For what it's worth, I've always felt there was way too much information on these signs.
there is a lot of information, yes.
I
would
appreciate the
agree.
work that went into them. I appreciate the way they were put together. I think they're somewhat hard to interpret. That master plan that's included in that one is a little bit hard to interpret for a lot of people who don't read maps very well. So I don't know. I would hope that we would pay maybe some attention to the content of these and the more quick read that people are accustomed to today, I think, to make them more useful on site. That's just a passing comment, I guess. But I think it can be important. I think we have a bit of problem with this at a lot of places. I think we have a problem with maps and the way they're displayed on the way we've put them up at Northgate, to be honest. I don't think they're very readable or very useful. So I think we ought to try to pay more attention to that. Let me see if I like very much the boulder theme that you mentioned. I think that's great. I think that water feature should be something that would be interesting and attractive as a destination for everybody in the city. And I think if you not only think about the splash pad, but how the water is actually introduced to the site, maybe some of it shoots into the site and does interesting things that you don't find at some of the other features, that can be something that is attractive and people want to go, kids want to go to those places. Yeah, I said I didn't have much to add beyond my fellow council members, but I do, obviously. There are several other things here that I really like. I appreciate very much that you all did this work, and I agree with them. I look forward to seeing how Wolf Pen can become better than it is even. Thanks.
Ms. McElwain, back to you.
So I don't bring this up very often, but many of you know my mother-in-law, Lynn McElhaney, was on council for a very long time. And if we had planted trees when she was on council along that back rim, they would be 30 to 40 years old at this point. So Wolf Pen Creek is something that's been in the collective consciousness of the city for a very long time. And we've had successes and we've had some pretty massive failures, if I'm recalling. Most of it due to the drainage issues that are there, and I think that we're perfectly primed to move forward with trying to knock this out of the park, so to speak. How much of that area is fenced? I don't have a gauge of that.
It's let me go back to this overview. The entire amphitheater site. So if you're looking at this map, well, actually, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make anybody dizzy. Where all the sevens are, those are kind of the gated areas, so everything within that area is fenced in.
Okay, and how many people can we easily fit within that area, would you estimate?
Our capacity currently is 7,000 people, and that's like a standing
Shoulder to
capacity.
shoulder.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah.
We've hit that a few times.
At which events?
So we have a local promoter that rents out the facility usually November, October every year, and I think there was a Cody Johnson concert that was at capacity.
Excellent.
Maybe a few others that he's done.
Is that space, is that amount of space where we need to be? We're not trying to expand that, stay within that, just put some anchoring entry points? Is that,
We are not proposing to expand it, but we certainly could.
okay. I have mixed feelings about splash pads myself. I do love the bouldering aspect of it. I don't have the concerns that Mr. Yancey mentioned about parents not having full attention. That's one of the blessings of a splash pad. Your kids are typically running and screaming right there, and you can have a conversation, which is very different than if you're, say, at a swimming pool. On the seating, I didn't expect to, but I really like the board seating that you find in different spots at Aggie Park. It's comfortable, it's easily accessible, it's not in the way. That may be something that would be easier to clean. I don't see the need for seats with arms and getting that fancy, but I have found this very comfortable as someone who really enjoys sitting at these events versus parking on a grassy knoll. Shade, I think that's really critical, especially if we're having events, in the summer. I would err on the side of having more versus less. I think the one there at Mitchell Pavilion is absolutely hideous. I don't know if there is a a less invasive way to do it or a retractable way to do it, but I think that that's something that I would personally like to see. For this project, I think we have a habit of going part way sometimes. I would like to see us do this right. And I think we're on the right track. This is a really good solid starting point, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But I would say for Wolf Pen, I would dream big.
I guess it's back to me. Just two comments. One, going back to Mr. Smith's comment about, I'd like to at least investigate the impact of removing that moat in front of the stage. Number one, I think it always looks ugly. The water is never clean. There's usually mud just below the surface, and I know it's a constant maintenance issue. If it were not there, you'd have more space just off the front of the amphitheater. Maybe you actually could raise the stage artificially by a couple feet inside there so that you have a little higher performance area, but that's another question. But I think if you could look into that, at least I certainly would encourage that. I support most of the other comments that have been made here. While I'd love to see stadium seating with a place to put my can of beer, yeah, I'd love to see that, but I don't think I need that. Some of those other ideas are certainly useful and probably more aesthetically smooth as far as fitting it all together. The other kind of thing that brings us to maybe a closure point on this, or at least a movement point, you indicated that there were some ideas from the private sector. I've seen one of those. I think you may have already met with those individuals. I think city management has as well, and economic development has as well. I think I'd like to see it. I really love the idea of a third-party entrepreneurial engagement here. A certain number of days a year, they have the rights to market entertainment events there under a lot of guidelines and a big development agreement. But I think having them involved would be really excellent, and I think the council would support that within the constraints of what the Rec and Parks Department and the city would like. I'd certainly encourage it. It's a way to raise some money. And so therefore, I think before we could move forward specifically, do this, do that, do something else, except maybe a few of them, things like Mr. Schaefer said, well, or maybe with Mr. Yancey, that you start with the gates. So the sense of place and that sort of thing that ought to be done.
I had just one more. It's more of a cautionary thing. I mean, okay, back when we first did the thing, we had these wonderful looking lakes. When you try to do things that nature doesn't want you to do, you're gonna fail. And putting nice seating in the floodway is, I think you'll spend a lot of money and then it will become something you have to go undo.
Does it have to go in the floodway, the seating?
Well, that's part of I think we need to look at those things and give due respect to Mother Nature in the design of this and go big. I agree. If we're going to do this, let's don't creep into it. Let's see what we got to do to make it really succeed.
I think the shade of some kind will be wherever, that'll be the premium seats in the afternoon, early evening for a lot of people.
Yeah.
No matter where you locate it, people are going to gravitate there. The concept that Mr. Yancey talked about, having maybe some pavilion-type structures at the top level, or maybe you have your seating and shade cover at the top level, so that people are in the lower level on blankets, and maybe even those stair steps would be great. But my point was really getting to moving forward. If there is an active engagement from an economic development point of view and a Parks and Recreation management point of view, that we ought to be looking at third-party engagement. Absolutely, let's get them harnessed and see if there is something there that matches a significant part of that, and then see which of those pieces need to be built first and who's going to pay for them. And that to me is how we move it forward from here. I don't know that tonight, this is a workshop generating ideas. As far as direction goes, I think there isn't any one of us up here that doesn't want to see it done tomorrow or be ready for next year or have some of those things done by next year. But if there is a valid, viable third-party entrepreneur that wants to sign an economic development agreement with us, then let's explore that as well and do that early on, which I think is happening.
And Mayor, if I could just add one thing here, certainly one of the next steps we'll be looking at is what some of these things are potentially going to cost, getting some of those ballpark figures, and then we'll be looking at recommendations on funding sources and those sorts of things, whether it's some of our unassigned fund balance or other things. That will all be part of some of the next steps on this whole process as well.
But in terms of putting a timeline on those next steps, are you prepared to talk about that?
I don't know that we have put a timeline together at this point, but we certainly can do that, yes.
Well, should the council put a timeline on that?
Council can do whatever you wish.
Well, I think the sense up here is we'd like to, given that we know you're engaged in some economic development discussions, and I know that's going to take a couple of months probably to sort through what their interests are, and what you guys are talking about, what each of these elements is going to cost, or modified versions of these elements. I would think we ought to hear back by early fall. I don't know whether others would disagree with that. As soon as you decide whether you got a third-party partner or not.
Well, we have had an initial meeting with a third-party partner who is bringing the programming aspect and then some potential capital improvements with that. We've had that initial meeting with them. The next step with them is to bring a proposal to you all to ask if you would like us to engage in some sort of contract negotiations with them. I think you'll see that in the next couple of meetings in executive session. And then staff would negotiate based on y'all's direction with them moving forward. I don't anticipate that process would take very long because we have that initial meeting. You all have seen that information, I believe, or at least some of you have sent that
Some
direction.
of us have, yeah.
And so we'll bring that to the whole council and get your direction there. From our capital projects and parks group have done some initial looking at costing of some of these elements, and we can show that to you as we move forward in more of a menu format so that you can see what some of these elements cost. And then, like Jeff said, it's going to have to be a discussion in budget to allocate some of those dollars to this project, because we have not done that yet.
And that would be appropriate, but I would imagine some of that discussion with the third party, if it reaches a point where you're bringing something to us that city management would recommend that we consider, that may have a little bit of design element. They may make some suggestions about moving things around or some aspect of that to make their business model work better, and that might be to our advantage as well. So I kind of leave that part of it open a little bit, that's all. Mr. White had a comment.
Does our third-party vendor have an expectation that this will be done for us to move forward with them?
Well, we don't have a vendor. We need to look at, actually, we probably need to look and see if anybody else is interested too. So probably not possible to just move forward with the agreement with somebody that proposes that. Need to see if there's any other interested parties out there. But they do, the gentleman we talked to did have some thoughts on improvements to the amphitheater area that he believes would make it more attractive to artists. Access to the amphitheater itself without having to walk in front of the crowd, the layout of the green room, potential seating and shading, but nothing that we haven't looked at or considered ourselves. And so some of it may be possible, some of it may be more difficult, like Kelsey said, with the constraints of the floodway and the floodplain on the site, but all things that we can look at.
Thank you very much. Anything further that we need to direct staff? Sounds like they are already well into it. I think you sense some passion from up here on the dais. However, I think I did hear that there are budget commitments that we're going to have to consider, which won't necessarily dampen the passion, but will make us think a little bit more. We'll come to that at the next opportunity when staff is ready to come back to us. Ms. Hayden, thank you for the update, for the creative ideas. You and your staff, I know, work hard at this, and I know that you're committed to creating as great as activation and experiential opportunities that we can make out of our entire park system, and this is a really great example. Thank you. Okay, I said we were going to be done by 8 o'clock, but I doubt it. We did have a speaker, but the speaker has indicated he's not here, if that's correct. So we move ahead without the. He was here, and then for personal reasons he had to leave again. So yeah, knowing the gentleman, he will certainly share his ideas with us at an appropriate time. 7.3, I think we're up to, is Ms. Kane. Presentation, discussion, possible action relating to the capital improvement projects update. Semi-annual, I think. About
Yes.
twice a year you come with this.
Yep, that's correct. Yep, Jennifer Kane, Capital Projects. Tonight, I'm going to go over our capital projects update. As you mentioned, we usually do this about twice a year. I have a handful of projects that I'm going to talk through. I certainly am prepared to talk to other projects as well if you have questions, and feel free to ask questions along the way. First up, I wanted to remind everyone, all of you, and then of course everyone listening, that we do have the capital improvements dashboard that's on our website at cstx.gov/CIP. We do have the majority of our projects on here, everything that's mapped and has certain locations. You can sort by facilities, parks, streets and drainage, wastewater, those types of things. We actually have about 82 active projects right now. There are a number that aren't showing up on the map because, for various reasons, some are electrical related, and so we're not showing them for security reasons. We have a number of projects that are more like feasibility studies, programming, that don't actually have site locations yet. And then we also have a handful of smaller projects like generator replacements and repairs that just aren't showing up on this map. First up, we've got the Rock Prairie Road widening. This is a section from State Highway 6 to Town Lake that's been under construction for a little bit now. We are replacing all of the existing asphalt roadway with a concrete roadway, curb and gutter, including storm sewer, bike paths, and sidewalks. The first 5 phases have been completed. We're currently in phase 6. And that is the section from Town Lake to Dublin Parkway. It is currently closed. We have detours in place while they complete that work. We do expect it to be completed in September of this year, so not too far off. And the picture you see there, the view is Rock Prairie westbound at the Bird Pond intersection, heading towards Scott and White at the hospital.
Can we ask questions as she
Yeah,
goes?
I think it's best to ask questions when you're here. So ask a question, please.
So I don't want to switch gears on you too much. Are we considering, or where are we at on the Public Works HQ? Because it's not on your list here today,
No.
right?
I don't have it on my list, but we can talk about it if you'd like.
Oh,
My question is ultimately going to weave to this destination. If we're looking at putting Public Works off of Rock Prairie, don't we need to do the full meal deal on Rock Prairie?
that's not this project, but there is another project about the rest of Rock Prairie East where
Right.
logically that would come up. That I don't know whether you're going to talk
It's-
about that or
It's
not.
my next slide, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Go to the next slide, then you can ask.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, as you mentioned, we are looking at a site currently that's off Rock Prairie Road that we're considering for a public works facility. I don't know if it will be the right place or the right fit for it, but it is located off Rock Prairie.
At the same time, are we considering that if we did do that site or any other one other than an upgrade to our existing site, are we looking at the disposition of that existing block of municipal facilities that we have there off of Krennic Tap, or what we're going to do with it from the police station all the way back to the current Public Works HQ?
Yeah, we have talked about it some, and I don't know if CMO wants to weigh in on it at all, but there have been some discussions that if we were to vacate there, there could be some other options for that site. Do keep in mind that it's not just Public Works located there. We have Public Works, Capital Projects, Fire Administration, Utility Customer Service, and of course the court. So we would have a number of components that would still be housed there, even if Public Works moves. So there would have to be considerations for that unless everyone was to move off that site.
And the $387,000 contract that we entered into with the company to do the study, feasibility, site selection, site analysis
Yes.
relative to Public Works HQ, what all was included in that? Would that be soil testing for all these sites and feasibility for, and a laundry list of choices for us to choose from?
Yeah, you basically covered it. We actually are, we're looking and doing geotech work on 2 of the sites that we're looking at. Actually, some of it is going to start tomorrow. But yes, they're doing some environmental reviews on selected sites. They're looking at traffic impact analysis. They're looking at drainage impacts, those types of things. They'll help with some upfront survey work. And then, of course, all of the programming and all of the inventory analysis and those types of things and projecting out for us of space layouts, those types of things.
And the roundabout final destination question: if a site impacting this roadway is ultimately selected by this council, wouldn't that necessitate that we do the full meal deal, the full width on this last length of Rock Prairie? I mean, surely with that number of vehicles letting out in the
Well, it
morning.
would necessitate the council also finding the money to do it, you're right. But that would be an appropriate discussion at that time. I'll turn to city CMO. It really is the CMO that kind of coordinates how these things fit together. I'll have to defer to you guys about whether you need a 4-lane road or not to adequately service a major public facility that's located on that. The only site we're considering is the old landfill site, not the landfill itself, but the undeveloped site and the frontage of it. I will say that the Solid Waste Management Agency, at its last meeting, authorized the permitting of the city to enter into agreement to do the geotech work there.
And
So,
doesn't
but
that-
they haven't made any decision about whether they're willing to transfer, sell, or whatever of the property. That's it. That'll come later when we get all the information and we weigh and balance the different locations.
But the sum total of the city's public works vehicles coupled with the CSISD's buses letting out on that road all at the same time in the morning.
So we would have to do, for the Public Works facility, if it were to go there, part of that process would be a traffic impact analysis. They would have to do that to see if it triggered anything. A lot of times, there will be traffic there. I personally don't believe that it would trigger an additional width to the roadway. It might be, maybe need a turn lane or a deceleration lane going in and out of the facility that might be needed. But again, that would be something we'd have to look at specifically if we were to select that site. And we have a ways out on this next phase of Rock Prairie because of land acquisition, which I was going to talk about a little bit. So the timing would be okay. I wouldn't expect we'd be under construction necessarily.
Well, under construction is one thing, but I think his point is it's under design.
It
And
is.
if you design it as 2 lanes, however, I think you said that it could be expanded to 4 lanes. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes, yeah,
So what you're putting into design now is not lost cost.
no.
And Jennifer, what's being designed now is a 3-lane?
It's a 3-lane section. You can see it up on your screen. And so it's 2 lanes each direction with a center turn lane. And it is, as you mentioned, and then it's got the bike lanes and then sidewalks off to the side. And it is designed in a way that you could add that 4th pavement lane fairly easily when you remove the bike lanes from out of the main roadway section, add a little bit to it in the buffer space, and then the bikes would go onto the shared use path. And so you're not redoing any of the pavement in order to add that additional.
So the
additional lane.
medians would not be continued past Dublin or past Town Lake.
No.
Okay.
And the land acquisition that's happening now would facilitate a 4th lane should we need it at some point.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very well. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Please proceed.
So we kind of covered this slide. So we are in design for this next section of Rock Prairie from Town Lake to William D. Fitch. We are in the 90% design phase. They're getting to 90% design. The big thing that really is critical path right now is land acquisition. We have about 10 properties that we're working with, some that are going more smoothly than others, I would say. And we typically gauge about a year to 2 years for land acquisition, and we're not even quite a year into it. So we've got a substantial amount of time left there. The other thing that is a little bit unique, we have 3 different gas companies that have pipelines out there. Normally we don't have quite so many, and so we're working with all of them to get the approvals that we need. It's called a LONO, a letter of no objection, that we can work close to them, or what we would need to do working close to their gas lines, because they cannot be avoided. Next up, we've got Krennic Tap rehabilitation. So this is in front of the Public Works Administration, so from Texas Avenue to Highway 6. This is one of our first concrete roadways that's up for reconstruction, and so we're replacing the entire section with new concrete pavement, and also adding 10-foot wide sidewalks and replacing some existing storm and sanitary sewer. We have 100% plans complete. We're finalizing all of the bidding documents, and it should go out to bid here in the next month or so. So you'll see construction starting, hopefully, following the contract approval, hopefully this fall. One thing to note, the Dartmouth intersection there's a substantial amount of work there, and we worked really hard to see if there was a way to maintain traffic whenever they're rebuilding a portion of that intersection. And so we'll likely have to have a closure there at that intersection for a while, but we've coordinated that already with police and fire, so they're aware to figure out the best ways in and out for everyone.
Is there going to be a roundabout anywhere on there?
No, there's not.
Not at Dartmouth?
No, we did look at that, but there's not space. There's not appropriate space there with the constraints.
Pretty wide intersection, but I'll go with your engineering judgment. I'd like to see a roundabout in that area. This just seems to me to be a very logical place, but if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit.
All right, then Lincoln Avenue. So I'm
Which
sure
does have a roundabout.
Which does. It's going to have 2 little roundabouts, one at Munson and one at Nimitz. So it's under construction. It has been since last summer, full reconstruction all the way from Texas Avenue to University. It also includes water and wastewater utilities and storm sewer, and then a signal modification down at the end of University. So we started on construction at the Texas end, and as you recall, we tried very hard to maintain traffic, at least in one direction, and that was unsuccessful due to the condition of the pavement compiled with a lot of the storms we were having, and so we had to go to a full closure, and we are continuing that as needed. It really was important for safety, not only of the workers, but safety of the vehicular traffic going through there. It just was not in good shape. So we have finished the section from Texas Avenue to Foster. That's complete. We're currently working on the next section from Foster to Nunn. We do expect that section to be complete the end of this month, early July, if the rain will hold off. And then the intersection at Nunn will remain closed to get that work redone there. And then we'll keep working in sections. Then it'll go Nunn to Ashburn, and then Ashburn to Munson, and then Munson to University. One thing that we're currently waiting on is Optimum has not completely vacated the areas that we need them to vacate, and so we're waiting on that. They have a big vault located down near University, but we're getting very close to it with our water line replacement because the water is happening ahead of the street work, and so that is a challenge.
I know the city of Bryan had to wait on Optimum or is it Frontier, one or the other, for a very long time.
I think it's Optimum.
And then finally, you just have to embarrass them into moving it up their agenda and getting it done. But we'll leave that to the time you want to do it.
And so currently we are, there have been a handful of change orders related to just various things that you encounter on rehab projects. We had a section of soil that had some contamination. We had some water service lines, different things, utility work that was in locations that weren't expected, some backed up drainage, those types of things. And right now, considering the change orders and the additional time associated with those, we're looking at February of 2026 for Lincoln to be completed. Next up is new water wells, which talked about a little bit earlier. So far, well, on this one, so we're building the 3 new wells out on our wellfield property, as Stephen mentioned, for redundancy and the max day capacity. We are in design currently. We also have a construction manager at risk on board with this one, so they are working with us all throughout the process, and it has allowed us to already bring to you two now different guaranteed maximum price packages. So they're releasing packages of work as soon as we can get far enough along to bid them out. So far, we've gone under contract for GMP 1 and 2, which includes silt fencing, staking, the drilling of a test well, and then the clearing and construction for access roads, and the construction of the well pads as well. So they're actually already started out on site, and they should be drilling the test well here in early July. You will expect to see 2 more GMP packages. The next one will be a lot of materials focused, and that'll be things like ordering all the pipe, generators, those types of things. And then the 4th and final GMP package will be the largest of the 4, and that will be for the actual construction and drilling of the permanent wells, and then all of the installation of the collection line. And I would expect that to get to y'all in November, early December timeframe.
I have a question on this real quick.
Yes, please, Ms. Smith.
Just curious, how deep are the wells?
We don't know exactly how deep yet. Probably around 3,000 feet, I think, is what they're projecting. We'll see once we do the test well.
Okay, thank you.
Next is the McCullough utility rehab. So this is the rehab of water and wastewater lines in the south side area. So Arizona Street, Phoenix, Carolina, Georgia. So wastewater lines were being replaced and moved, and then we had water lines being replaced as well. So this one, the majority of the utility work has been completed, and the contractor is mostly focusing on patching the roads. So if you've been down any of those roads lately, or even down Holloman, there's a significant amount of just cuts and patching in the road. And so they're working to do those patches. And then we've coordinated with our public works in the streets department, and as part of their street maintenance plan in FY26, they will follow behind us and resurface all of those roads, including Holloman. So it is a little patchy probably for the next couple of months, and then it'll all get resurfaced.
And that includes the curb and gutter where needed, in addition to mill and overlay?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Bee Creek Phase 3. So this is another project that's almost complete. So this was the construction of a new 48-inch sewer line, and then 48 and 42-inch, and then also had the rehab of some existing sewer line as well that happened, or slip lining between Texas Avenue and FM 2818. So the majority of all of that work has been completed. Right now, the last piece is to rehab the manholes, and so they've just been gearing up to start all of that work. But of course, the rain continues to slow them down a little bit. So they'll continue that as soon as they're able. There's one thing, I don't know if you've noticed, if you've driven down Texas Avenue lately, right in front of the Cy Miller Park and the old police department, there's significant erosion that's occurred there that, so we're gonna have to do something else as well, that once we put the project in, all these big storms, it's eroded before the vegetation could establish, so there will be something in addition coming for that piece there.
I will thank you for the part of that, one little piece of that project was to take the stream crossing line, 40-year-old one that's been right behind my house. I've now lost my waterfall, but that's okay. I'm happy it's out of there, and now hopefully the creek will smooth itself out.
Yes,
Yeah.
great.
And I still got 3 manhole covers, but that's okay.
Up next, we've got one of our 2022 park spawn projects. So it's the Bachman Park Senior and Little League buildings. If you've not been by there lately, you can see on the pictures, but they look really, really nice, and they're getting really far along, which is fantastic. So both buildings are about 85% complete. The site is lagging behind. Again, you've heard me say it several times now, but the weather has been really difficult, unseasonably wet this summer. And so they're currently working on installing the ceilings in the buildings. They're painting the metal structures outside. So they're getting close, and we do expect them to still be complete in August as planned. There may be some minor things, but we are working to hit the dates that we need to be completed so Little League can get back on there for their fall season.
Quick question. If we select and finally decide to build or fund the already pretty much designed building, fields at Veterans Park, senior league operations will move over there mostly, if I'm not mistaken. Would that then be, you label Little League building, senior league building, it'd really be mostly Little League operations at that Bachman Park site?
So I may need to ask Parks about this. I don't think that they plan to just move over there. I think they'll use both. Is that right? I think they're going to still plan to be able to use both spaces to add additional capacity.
My understanding was, and what we've been telling the Little League folks, is that they're going to have access to more fields. Maybe those aren't the two that they'll have access to. This is a construction thing, so I don't know if I need an answer right now, but I just am always sensitive to what we have told Little League people that they would have access to.
Sure, we can talk through that more and then provide more information. I'll get to in a second on the other baseball fields, but we will be coming with a larger update to y'all on that soon, and we can provide some of that information then.
Thank you.
Okay, Central Park Operations Shop, again, another bond project, also slated to be completed this summer. If you go by there, the buildings are pretty substantial, and it's really neat. Like when they first went up, it's a pretty significant difference. And so the metal buildings are up. A lot of the site paving has been completed, and so right now as they're finishing up, should be done end of the summer, working on making sure all of the last minute items are coming in. If any furniture is needed, any other equipment and furnishings, getting those ordered. So looking to have it open and ready to go well ahead of Christmas in the Park starting. Lincoln Center area improvements, another bond project. So this one included adding a restroom out at Lincoln Recreation Center, pedestrian improvements, and adding a shade structure out there. So that was phase one. We have two different things shown on here. So phase one, we're almost completely done with design, and so ready to go out to bid on that piece of it. The secondary piece, we have a little bit of budget using CDBG funds to look at upgrading the splash pad area. And so we have incorporated into the design of the restroom and the shade structure to accommodate for that future expansion. It completely works with what's there currently, but if we were to move forward with the splash pad upgrade and expansion, it would all accommodate future growth as well. And so that one, like I said, we're probably ready to go out to bid on that or to get it going to construction probably this summer, early fall. Next is Thomas Park improvements. We brought the master plan to y'all several months back, and so the design team has been working on schematic design, which we should get here in about a month. They're working on, the play areas, the drainage is a big piece out there. I don't know if you recall, we combined the Thomas Park Improvements Project, which was at $3 million from the bond, and then before the bond was passed, there was another pot of money that included just drainage improvements and some site accessibility, sidewalks, those types of things. So instead of trying to keep them separate, we've just combined it together, which is why you see the budget at a higher number there. And so we had two design teams. We got all the information from the first one, and then the design team that's currently working on the overall park is incorporating all of those components into their design. As we've talked about previously, we have been waiting for Lincoln to be completed, which, as I mentioned earlier, should be completed in early 2026. And then we would start work on Thomas Park. So we expect the design for the park to be done sometime this fall, early winter, go out to bid, and be ready to go to construction shortly after Lincoln is finished. And then we will quickly move into the 3 road projects that are over there as well that greatly need to be done. So Francis, James, and Puryear. And so our intention is to get the park started, make sure all the heavy equipment, earth moving, those types of things, drainage gets completed, and then we'll move into the roadway improvements. Texas Independence Park at Midtown. Another one that we somewhat recently have brought the master plan to y'all for review. Our design team has been working on that in conjunction with the construction manager at risk. That has proved to be really beneficial, especially for a park that's so unique and has a lot of really custom type features and components, just to help with constructability ideas, pricing exercises, those types of things. So as you know, the park is planned to include, there's a restroom already out there, looking to add a restroom off of Midtown Drive as well. Trails, both for pedestrians and for a lot of bike-type trails, components, bike track, pump track, those types of skills facilities, dog park, playground, disc golf, and fishing in the pond. So we're currently in design development. And then we will be looking to keep moving through design, and they'll continue the different pricing exercises too. Right now, the latest that we've seen from them is we had estimated during the master plan about 20 million. We're tracking maybe a little over that, but we're working as we go through design to really kind of hone in down to that number. The project is currently in the budget and funded at $9.2 million. So there is a difference there that we need to come back to council to talk through options if it's phasing or to fund a future project.
We awarded that to Spa Glass or somebody big.
To Skanska.
That's right, Skanska. Thank you.
Yes. And one thing to note, it will be coming to y'all at the next council meeting on the 10th. If y'all recall, we originally were looking at Independence Park as that front portion that was like 68 acres. Now we've added the additional portion on the back where we're adding additional trails and the disc golf and those types of things. Some feedback we had gotten was to add a restroom off of Midtown Drive and some parking over there. So there's some additional design work that needs to be done associated with that. And so that change order will come to y'all because that wasn't originally part of the scope when we started.
A restroom? Is that what you said?
Yes, we're looking to add just a small restroom off of Midtown Drive, maybe 1 or 2 stalls, just a small one up there for people coming in off, so they're not having to go all the way into the park. So it's about 120 acres to go all the way through.
That I know what the cost of restrooms are by city prices. That's pretty expensive add-in.
Sure.
Okay.
And that can certainly be something that's like on a menu to consider.
Is a small parking area there, trailhead, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is our intention.
I think that's a great idea. And I assume restroom, I suppose, that comes from the Parks Board?
That came from, I'm trying to think where that came from. I think it came from some discussions with council. We heard some just public feedback. And then I don't remember if Parks Board said it or not, but we heard it from several different entities. And again, something that can be added or can't be, but we're planning to at least design a space for it.
Thank you.
All right, ball fields at Veterans Park. I'm not sure if any of y'all have seen this layout yet or not, but we have started on early conceptual design for the 3 new baseball fields at Veterans with the championship field, as you see in the center there. We have also started meeting with the steering committee that we had brought to council a couple of months ago, which includes members from Little League, College Station ISD, the 12, the Bucks, Parks Board, Brazos Christian, and of course the Bombers are members of that as well. And we've also had some separate meetings with the Bombers as well to understand their specific needs. So we've had 2 meetings so far. This incorporates a lot of them. We still have some from our last meeting. I guess it was earlier this week that we're going to make some changes to. So you've got the 3 fields. The one in the center is the larger championship field, just high level. Kind of see the items in blue off the side of that. Those are shade structures over like elevated deck seating areas, which was a request of the Bombers, but things like we've included concessions, restrooms, locker rooms, batting cages, all of those types of things. As I mentioned earlier, we will be coming back to council relatively soon once we finalize a conceptual plan and some cost estimates with our construction manager. We'll bring it back to council for your feedback.
What is your timeline for completion on that? You think we can get that done by the summer of 2027?
I think it is possible. I think we do need to move quickly. And we've been, like we mentioned this also to the steering committee the other day. It's great that we already have our construction manager on board that helps expedite things. We will likely have multiple packages, maybe a site package, drainage package. There's significant drainage work needed because of where it's located in the park. So I do think it is possible as long as we keep moving through the process at a good pace.
Did the little roadway behind it, did that necessitate us getting some sort of shared easement with Texas A&M, or is that all on our property?
It's currently all on our property.
Wow, y'all got that squeezed in there.
And so, and the biggest thing that you'll see, there's some changes that we're proposing to make. It looks like on this site plan, there's a secondary access point off of University to add that secondary parking lot in the back. We're proposing to actually shift all the fields back and move all of the parking and those components to the front to keep it all kind of in one area for lots of reasons. But that'll be probably the biggest change you might see in our next iteration.
An edit from what we're looking at here.
Yes.
Okay.
And is that is that 32 or 30? Is that a soccer field that's imaged that it could fit right in that area? Is
Yes,
that-
a flat field. We've currently have it laid out just to show that a flat field for soccer, football, other sports could fit there if desired. Not that that would necessarily be the intent or the lines would be painted all the time, but it could
Just
fit.
give us a parameter.
Yes, yes.
Is it easy to switch between one sport to another?
So, I mean, I think Parks would have to jump in on it a little bit more, but as far as the artificial turf that's out there, we've talked about that a little bit. What they typically do, if it's a baseball field to be transitioned to a flat field, they do little markers in, so it doesn't actually have all the lines, but there's little markers out there so they can go out and paint the lines on it. You have to remove some of the mounds, those types of things, but it does take some work, but it's not impossible.
Thanks.
All right, fire station number 7. So as you can see in the picture, the site looks a little differently than when y'all were there for the groundbreaking. So as you remember, we have 2 different packages. And so we had the offsite utilities package, which is almost complete, where we have the Dalton Road shut down for the utility connections coming through there. And so we expect actually for that roadway to be back opened here next week. And then, of course, as you see in the picture, they have started clearing the site, and so they're preparing it to start actually going under construction on the building. The next kind of impact that you'll see out there, probably in the next, I think it's the first or second week in July, we have to remove a portion of the median that's in Greens Prairie Road, and so we're going to have to close down 1 lane each direction. So we'll still maintain traffic both directions, but it will have a closure there so they can remove the median to allow where the fire trucks can go both directions. And we are still very much on track to be complete next fall, the fall of 2026. Foster sidewalks, you may have seen those behind City Hall under construction. We have completed the first section that was from Walton to Francis, so that's substantially complete and open. Just maybe some minor items here and there to correct. They're currently working on the section from Gilchrist Avenue to George Bush, and all of that should be done by September of this year. And there are some detours in place for one-way traffic to maintain safety.
Those mailboxes look great. They were in like 5-gallon buckets there for a while.
Yeah. That is it. I mean, I'm glad you brought up that. That is one thing that's a challenge that I don't think people think about is maintaining mail access and maintaining trash services pickup. There's a lot of logistics and work that our contractors and we have to do to make sure that all of that can be maintained because it's very difficult when traffic control's in place. And it doesn't look the best always. This is my last slide, but just to note, we have 2 completed bond projects. I know a lot of you attended the 2 grand openings, but the pickleball and multi-use courts at Anderson opened, and Bee Creek and Central Park tennis courts. Both of those were completed several months ahead of schedule, which was super exciting. We were able to get all of those courts open ahead of the Memorial Day holiday, and I know Kelsey is going to share some information in her presentation about visitors that they've had at both. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions or anything about other projects as well.
We'll start with Mr. Shaver.
Jennifer, thanks. That's a ton of information. You're always very good at putting it in a concise way for us. Can you go back to the Independence Park thing real quick?
Sure.
I just want to mention this while we've got it on our minds, and I think some of us have talked about this in the past. And since Midtown continues to be something that we're thinking about in terms of different scales of things that might be done there, I just want to, we're already making the park bigger. There's that additional acreage that's being added to the west, which you indicate, and the possibility of a restroom and parking area. I still want us to think about going across Midtown to the feeder road, and there's already part of the Lick Creek Hike and Bike Trail that goes around. And I realize that's an old landfill. We've talked about that, and there may be some difficulties with that, but maybe there's some simple ways to connect to the existing Lick Creek Hike and Bike Trail and come back around the other side and connect to Midtown, so that we can also add signage over there potentially to talk about this park being there and add to that sense of place in a way that gets us to a more visible spot out on the highway. That's all I wanted to say.
Sure, thank you.
You're here.
Any other comments?
No, thank you.
Mr. Yancey?
Your very last project? Anderson Park, picture on the left. As one member of council, I was blown away at what we were able to accomplish out there for, I think, $1.7 or $1.9 million. Once this massive bolus of spending relative to parks is done. I'm sure it's going to be a while before we make further investments. I would just, for future councils, I mean, we have so many green space parks. I mean, if we could pick 3 or 4, I mean, you could really impact some neighborhoods by doing very modest but impactful improvements like this for a relatively low cost. I was just blown away. We were able to do all of that for less than $2 million. So great job.
Ms. McElhaney,
Awesome job, per usual.
any comment down here? Mr. Wright.
Can you go back to that Midtown Park? I just want to point out, because it does keep coming up, and I don't want to relitigate Midtown at this point in life, but we are looking at investing $20 million into a park in Midtown for the city to use, but also for the people that live there to use the most. So I would just point that out. I know it won't eliminate some of their issues that they're seeing, but we are putting money into that neighborhood, significant money that is not going to any other neighborhood in the city. So thank you for all that you do. It's a great job.
Mr. Smith?
Sure, you're doing a great job. This is not easy, keeping up with all that stuff, and you have all that information just seemingly right at the tip of your tongue. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you. I do want to mention I appreciate that, and I've got a really great team of project managers, land agents, inspectors, so they do most of this hard work.
I think one thing to take away from this, though, is Mr. Yancey brought it up, the coordination of what the demands would be on that extension of Rock Prairie East, given the uncertainty of where we're going to locate public works, should we move it at all. Anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. We have one more item,
Thank you.
which is a similar presentation of annual or biannual update from Ms. Hayden. This is a 7.4 presentation, discussion, possible action related to Parks and Recreation Department annual update. Oh, this is an annual update. Means you only have to do it once a year? We never see you again? No, I know that's not true.
Yeah. And actually, I think the last annual update was done in late 2023, so it's been a while.
Oh.
But tonight, the numbers that you'll see are fiscal year 25 year-to-date, with an exception of aquatics, and I'll call that out when we get there. But, and so just to point out a few things within the Parks and Recreation Department. This year, we have hosted and will host 25 tournaments out at the Veterans Park and other parks. And the estimated tourism visitors that are coming from those 25 events being held within the park system is 125,000. This week, actually, we're hosting the 7-on-7 state football tournament out at Veterans Park. We have 128 high school football teams coming out. We had a few lightning delays today, but we're hoping that the weather holds off. Knock on wood. We have 17,117 email subscribers. We send out a weekly email newsletter, and we're continuing to try to grow that number. We have 72 full-time employees, and during the heat of the summer, we inflate with 198 part-time and seasonal employees. That's our camp counselors, our lifeguards, and so on. We have 56 developed parks currently, 42 miles of walking trails, and this fiscal year we've had 4,733 facility and field rentals. We've had some really big wins this year. We have received 2 grants from Texas Parks and Wildlife, both of those for Texas Independence Park at Midtown. In January, we got notice that we received the local parks grant, which is $750,000 for Texas Independence Park at Midtown. And then just in May, we were notified that we received the recreational trails grant for just under $300,000 for Texas Independence Park at Midtown. So it's almost a little bit over $1 million in grant funding for that property. In addition, we also were certified as a Bird City, Texas. It was a huge initiative done by a lot of staff and a lot of community members, and that's a 3-year certification. We're really excited to be a part of that. And then we also received the Lone Star Legacy Parks designation for Bryson Park. And you know, the best thing about the Bird City and Legacy Park was that those were efforts that we partnered with community members to help us get those designations. And this next year, we're working towards nominating Thomas Park as another legacy park. Current projects that we are working on, I won't go into too much detail on these because a lot of them Jennifer just highlighted, but those in blue, those are bond projects that we're working on with capital projects. And as Jennifer mentioned, Anderson Park. We have this new software that we can use to track visitation to our park system. And so since reopening Anderson Park, we have had 7,500 visitors to the park. That's in a month. And their average time at the facility is 89 minutes. So they're coming and they're spending a lot of time there, which is really cool to see that activation. And year over year, that's 1,000% increase in visits.
That's the pickleball fields.
Pickleball and
80% of that in pickleball, or is that evenly split?
I
People
don't
using the
know
other
where they're
flat
going.
fields? I don't know.
I don't know where they're going, but every time, you drive by, the futsal and the bike polo is activated as well as
Oh,
pickleball.
really? Oh,
So
that's what I wanted to hear.
a little bit of everybody.
I'll say that I stopped by there at Memorial Day. My son and I went and played some futsals. I was like, I don't know what this is. Let me go buy a ball and play it. We had a lot of fun, but pickleball was just filled. People were grilling, which I don't know if they're allowed to do, but they were out there grilling. They were just having the time of their life. And so it's amazing what investment in one park can revitalize an entire area.
Certainly.
That was just my 2 cents on that one.
I agree, and if with Councilman Wright, 100%, and if you annualize that to 20,000 visitors, in year one, that means we only spent $95 per citizen for a year worth of entertainment at Anderson Park. I mean, that's incredible. If you could extrapolate that over 4 or 5 parks, again, a future council, Sandstone Park, big open space, nothing there, Anyway, I'll hush.
Really exciting to see that activation. Some other key projects that I will point out, Summit Crossing Park is currently under construction. That's a parkland dedication funding there. We are bringing back to you, hopefully in the next couple of months, the Veterans Park Master Plan that we've been working on alongside capital projects, and also the Recreation Center feasibility study. And then I also wanted to point out, we recently finished up a system-wide conditions assessment. So going around to all of the 56 parks in our park system and looking at all the assets that we have. It took about a year to do that project, but really taking a look at improvements that need to be made to existing and aging infrastructure. And then last budget year, the council approved a capital revolver, so $2.5 million to reinvest into the park system. And so some of the pictures you see there, we're working on some playground replacements that will come to you for approval. We've recently purchased new trash can receptacles. So the one you see there is traditional wood, and so we're looking at upgrading those so they're less maintenance long-term, as well as the water fountains throughout the park system. So reinvesting into existing infrastructure. Next, we'll go through some of our programs. So like I mentioned, the aquatic programs, these numbers are referencing last summer because we're in the heat of the summer. And so, but last summer we hosted 1,500 swim lessons. We had 215 kiddos on the Tsunami swim team. We have 66 passes sold for the Aqua Fitness program. And Public Swim was at 38,000. And then we had 63 rentals across both Adamson Lagoon and the Cindy Halloran pool. And then some new programs this year, we've introduced private swim lessons. So we've always done group lessons, but we had a request for private, and so we've introduced that. We've introduced dive-in movies, so some special events at the pool, and then a sensory swim time at Cindy Halloran pool. For athletic programs, these are year-to-date, so fiscal year-to-date, so October to now. We've hosted 394 adult teams in our sports league, so that's softball, kickball, and volleyball. And then in our youth basketball league at the Lincoln Center, we've had 534 kids. And then for field allocation, we have 12 different partners. So those are Little League, College Station Youth Soccer, and a lot of our pay-to-play sports. And so, to answer your question in regards to Little League using the fields, once we add on Bachman as it's renovated and the 3 new baseball fields, those 3 new fields will go into the allocation process. And so any of the groups that we work with will have access to be allocated to those fields. We had 27 kids in the Challenger Bowling program, and then our tennis program continues to grow. We had 230 kids in the tennis programs, and then 157 adults sign up for those programs.
Kelsey,
Yes.
Councilman Wright, do we have a pickleball program?
We do not currently have a pickleball program. We do offer pickleball at the Lincoln Center, but it's open play, and then, of course, Anderson Park.
Would it be beneficial to have a pickleball program?
Something we could certainly look into, yes.
If the pickleball community needed a more of a league kind of system, they'd have to be cooperative, and right now, it's just fun.
Yeah.
It is, and I think there's also a lot of people out there who want to learn how to play pickleball. It can be intimidating your first time going out there. There's a lot of rules, and so possibly like an intro could be. Over at the Lincoln Center, we had 258 kids participate in our after-school program, and we currently have 259 kids enrolled in the summer camp program with an average daily attendance of 180 kids coming to that program. The adult membership count, we have 125, and so those are individuals who come in to use the facility, whether it's open gym or Zumba classes or the weight room that we have on site. And then some key events that I wanted to point out this year, we did a Girls in STEM program, which was really cool. We had 60 kids come out to that. Of course, our Keeping the Dream Alive celebration for Dr. Martin Luther King, we had 250 people at. And then to kick off the new year, they did a program called Fit Fest, where we had 50 people come out and get the new year started with some exercise. Our senior services program continues to be something that everybody likes. The membership is $27 annually to join. We currently have 389 pass holders, and they've scanned their passes into one of the facilities 11,834 times. And monthly, we offer 228 programs across those 3 centers. So there is always something to do.
Didn't we have some senior programs over at Pebble Creek Country Club? Didn't we have some senior programs there? Are you offering anything over there?
Not that I'm aware of since I've been here, maybe in the past.
Okay.
But
Okay.
not currently. And then we also hosted 16 special events, and those are free to encourage people to come in. You don't have to have a membership to come to those events, but again, trying to encourage people to come out. Cemeteries, we do also operate both of the city's municipal cemeteries, the historic College Station Cemetery, and then the Memorial Cemetery that houses the Aggie Field of Honor. Our year-to-date sales is $397,000. We've had 132 internments, and we've sold 119 plots and 68 columbarium niches. For community events, I referenced these with the Wolf Pen Creek presentation that we did earlier, but the one thing that wasn't on there is Christmas in the Park. And this last year, we had about 8,000 attendees. It was really cold and wet both days, so attendance wasn't that light, but it was a little light due to weather.
Could you speak to just briefly on Food Truck Wednesdays? I know that's pretty regular, and I talk about it periodically on the radio, but I haven't been there. I guess it depends if the market is not there, the food truck people are just going to say it's not worth it. However, it seems to continue. Are we
Yes.
subsidizing that, or?
We are not subsidizing it, but we aren't making the food truck vendors pay a fee. So they come out, of course, they have to have their health permit. It was slow, like I mentioned last year. In 2024, in 2025, we saw a really big increase in participation. We have almost 200 people coming out every night. I went to a few of them and talked to the food truck vendors, and they all said they were having great success. We program the food truck vendors to come out, and so we're really selective in making sure that we only have 2, savory providers and then 1 dessert, so that there's enough to go around. But we've had really good success this last spring, and so it's not happening anymore. It's in the spring, twice a month on Wednesdays.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then our conservation outreach events. This is something we're really proud of, the growth that we've had over the last year. So these are events that have been held out at the Gary Halter Nature Center. And we hosted a star party with 594 attendants, a Monarch March in March with 553 attendees, and then of course our Park in the Dark, where you can actually camp in a park. Any other time you cannot camp in the park, but on Park in the Dark at Lick Creek, we have families come out and camp in the parks. And then our summer camp attendees, we have 189 kids signed up for those nature conservation summer camps. And then the Cooling College Station plan, the Parks Department has implemented the first part of that, which was the residential tree program this last fall. We gave out almost 1,500 trees. 1,000 of those were small seedlings. At Christmas in the park, we did the loblolly pines, so tied to Christmas. And then we did the native tree giveaway out at Veterans Park in December, where we gave away 1,000 3-gallon trees and 450 15-gallon trees. The budget for this was the 450 15-gallon trees, but we bought them from Trees for Houston, which is a nonprofit, and they donated the other seedlings and the 1-gallon trees. So we were able to really get more trees out. We are also currently working on the planting of trees within the park system as a part of the Cooling College Station plan. We're working on the RFP right now and hopefully should bring that back to you all this fall to implement the planting across 11 different parks in the park system. We are also working on updating our master plan for the Parks Department. The plan that we have currently was 2010 through 2020, so it has been expired since COVID. But we are working on a 5-year update. We're currently in the community engagement phase of that, and we're taking a little bit of a different approach with pop-up community engagement. We've had a lot of surveys recently and a lot of other plans being updated, and so we are meeting people where they're at. So we're going out to swim lessons, we're going out to the pools, we're gonna work to set up something at the library, and really trying to engage the community where they are currently to get that engagement. And so we're in that phase, and we'll start to bring that in front of you as we get closer to finishing that update. We also are about to host Games of Texas. So this is a really big event. It's happening at the end of July. We anticipate 12,000 athletes and their families to be in town for this event. We are partnering with the City of Bryan and the university on this. And this is my last slide. And so next week, we are hosting the second annual I Heart America celebration at Wolf Pen. That'll be Friday, July 4th. We'll have a concert with Infinite Journey, which is a Journey tribute band, and then fireworks at 9:30. This year, we're really excited. We have a sponsor, 2 sponsors, monetary sponsors. Presenting sponsor is Xfinity, where we've gotten a $10,000 sponsorship from them, and then independent sponsor from HEB for $5,000. And of course, working with the College Station Noon Lions Club to have family events, watermelon, and sausage. So that is my last slide. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the annual update. Maybe it'll be annual in the future. Very interesting. Any comments? Let me start with Mr. Schaefer again. Any comments?
I would just say thank you, Kelsey. I think having been a member of this community for a long time, I've always felt like we've done a good job with Parks and Recreation, and that goes back to other councils and other management, et cetera. I know you've been here a short time, but I would like to compliment you on what you've done since you've been here. And I think the places, the spaces, the programs that we have are excellent. They really add a lot to this community. They help make us a desirable place for people to be, to move to raise kids, to enjoy these amenities is a really important part of life, and I think we do a good job of that. And I also am pleased that one of the things I've seen, and I think in your tenure, it certainly has accelerated some, is the addition of more trails. And that if you look at surveys, and you know this, and maybe some others do too, is if you look at survey work that people do when they look at assessments for recreation throughout Texas and across the nation, trails are the number one thing that people ask about because people use them daily for a variety of things. And so I'm just glad that we're doing that better and better all the time. Thanks.
Ditto.
Ms. McElhaney?
Of all of the services that the city offers, there's not one that I'm not impressed with. But our Parks Department, I would put it up against anyone in the whole, any city in the whole country, and I'm pretty sure we would stack up incredibly. We use the parks in my family on a weekly, if not daily basis. We're very regular users of Thomas Park. We were at Adamson Lagoon this past Saturday for a party, and the staff is incredible, the facilities are incredible, and the city's commitment, long-term commitment to parks really shows. And I'm glad that we've had a series of parks directors, culminating in yourself, that have really lived and breathed the quality of life of our citizens into reality. So just thank you for all that you and your staff do.
Mr. White?
Kelsey, I can't tell you how excited I am about this. If I had my crystal ball, I'd have you do a monthly report. So, I mean, this is College Station. This is what we are. Look what all you're offering to our community. It is amazing. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You were doing fabulous things. I only have one question for you, and that is, are we reaching out to the YMCA? I actually went to a YMCA event today. Are we partnering with them on any of our kids' camps? They're currently doing a camp, and I know y'all are doing summer camps. Are we partnering with them? Are we thinking about partnering with them?
We are, I wouldn't necessarily say partnering with them, but we have worked with them as they've established their existing summer camp right next to Wolf Pen. And so we've worked with them to give them access to the Wolf Pen Park for their summer camp program. And so we're in communication and pretty regularly are communicating back and forth with their leadership.
They just hired a new director.
Yes.
Just recently. I think they would be very open to working maybe in the next summer. I know they're just kind of getting off the ground right now, but thank you for working with them. Great job. Thank you.
Mr. Wright?
I don't really have anything to add. I'll ditto everything else. I'll just say that it's nice when we get these nice annual updates. As the city grows, I think every department has to step up their game, and parks included, and it's just really impressive what we can do to service a city of our size, rapidly growing, very efficiently, and it's very well run. And I'm excited. Can't wait to hear the Journey cover band. I'm very excited about that, so that'll be fun.
And Mr. Smith?
Sure. Kelsey, thank you for your work. In particular, I want to say thank you, and please continue the reinvestment in the existing parks. We have a lot of great facilities, and the new stuff is great, but the existing parks, like my neighborhood park I go to many times a week, and it's nice to have those facilities, and it's nice to have them maintained. It's nice to have them in good condition, and so thank you so much for that, paying attention to that, and I will echo the trails. I'm a trails lover. It's a good thing to do, and I'm also a participant in the senior center, and it's a good thing too. So I haven't seen anything bad. It's great. Thank you.
Okay, well, let me wrap this up and echo all of the plaudits and that you justly deserve, your staff. I think the going beyond the infrastructure issues, which consume a lot of your time, it's the creative talent of you and your staff in bringing more experiential opportunities, more stuff, more things to do, and more organized things to do where organization's needed. I think I've seen a tick up 2 or 3 notches in that since you've been here, and I think that reflects on you and the staff you have selected and hired and brought in on the recreation side, not just the park side. I don't want to leave on a downer note, but I will just touch on one thing we discussed earlier today. I guess this afternoon, early evening. You are one of the clients of the mowing contract. So you'll be in a good position to help Mr. Kaler and Public Works make a decision about while we're receiving the quality of services that we expect. So I know your high standards, and I know you will not be reticent to point out areas that need to be touched on. A new company coming in will need some guidance and will need some encouragement, shall I put it in a good term, from the city department clients that are helping to pay the bill, because it's spread out across a number of different departments, and I know you're one of the bigger users of that, so I know that the competition fields are taken care of by your crew, but a lot of the just neighborhood parks are under that contract, so I encourage you to do what you would normally do, and don't be quiet if you see some things that need to be done in that area.
That also falls under Mr. Stephen Richardson, who has very high expectations. So I know
Yeah,
he'll
yeah.
definitely keep an eye on it.
That's true. You just have to listen to Steve.
Yes.
Stephen, and he'll bring it to you, and you will together resolve that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So I also just want to mention our staff in Parks and Rec. Maybe it's a new metric that we need to be tracking, but our leadership team across the leadership team has over 50 years of experience within the Parks Department. So we have a really passionate, dedicated team. And it's not just me. I've only been here 18 months, but really getting them just saying yes and getting out of the way, because we have a really, really solid Parks team. So thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you. We'll look forward to your next appearance, which I'm sure will not be the annual update. It'll be something very specific. Okay, we're going to move on to the regular agenda.